Hello there, Paul Mott speaking. This is lesson number 2 in our 4-part introductory series that's just going to show you how to use CrystalWerx. So in the first lesson, which I hope you've already watched, you saw how we were able to import some SAP data that was located in these Excel spreadsheets directly into CrystalWerx. And now we have that information in CrystalWerx, and the way you would see it is you would go to the factory. In CrystalWerx, you would look at the tables, and there would be the 4 tables that you've imported. If you wanted to look at one of them, you would click on the view icon, and that would bring up the table. Now, we see here on the view here something called everything, and if we try and scroll this table, we see that it's in fact very, very wide. So what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to show you how to do some more refinements to make this data a little easier to work with inside of CrystalWerx. So to do that, we're going to go back out here, and instead of working in the factory where we look at instances of the data, we're going to go to the studio, which is where things have been configured. So our gateway created these table types for us during the import process, and these are basically representations of the columns that make up these various different tables. It also, at the same time, created for us some views. So for each of the table types, it created a view called everything, and that just basically has all of the columns in it. Well, we can very easily create a different view that has whatever columns we want by just simply editing this list. So if we don't want to have a particular column in here, we can just take it out right here and edit this list and change this list any way we want. Essentially what we want to do is end up with this comma delimited list that shows exactly which columns we want to have. And so, in my mind's eye, I'm assuming you would too. You would have some idea what columns you want to see. And so you don't have to watch me type those in. I'm just copying and pasting it in here. But for example, on the Mara view, if I was just going to be browsing through this data, maybe these are the only columns that I need to see. Okay, so I've typed in those columns. I've given it a name called Browse, and I'll say Create New View, and that's it. Now if I go back to the factory, and in fact what I'm going to do here is just open that up in a new tab because we're going to be bouncing back and forth quite a bit. If I go to the factory and go to my tables and look at the Mara table, now I have something called Browse. So I can always look at everything, or if I want to browse, I'm just getting those columns that I wanted to have shown. So it's a lot easier on the eyes to just have these 4 columns here that are interesting and not have all of them. We can do the same thing. We'll go back here to the studio. We could do the same thing for any of the other tables that we created. So for example, if I look at the MARD table, and I want to create something there that I'm going to call the Browse view. Okay, and again I have a list of column names that I think are interesting. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste those in instead of editing all of that right now. So those are that would be the final result right there. I'll say create that view. I'm going to do the same thing again for my MARM table. We'll call that Browse, and I'll put in what I think is a list of interesting columns. So these columns, you can have as many views as you want. Just give it a name. That's all you have to do, and it could have any set of columns you want to have in it. There's really no restriction. It's just whatever you want to spend the time setting up. And last one I'll do here is this one. We'll call that Browse, and we will put in just these bits right here. Okay. Now, when I'm creating these views with this kind of a list, this is also controlling the order of the view, right? So if I go and look at this, I can see that the order is that. If I ever decided that I wanted to change my mind and I was editing this view, all I have to do is just go down here and re-edit this list right here. And to hit enter and update columns, and it'll just rearrange things for me. So, anytime I want to change the ordering of things, it's just a simple matter of typing in what it is I want to have here. It's also showing me, which columns have not been used, if I wanted to add them back in. If I wanted to delete a column, I have a button here that'll do that, or I could just delete it from this list where I'm typing and update. So it's very, very flexible to edit a particular view. But essentially, for any one of these table types that you can have as many views as you want. So now when I go back to my factory and I look at the various different types of tables that I have here, I have these nice browse views that I can use. So that's a lot nicer to look at. And that was pretty easy to do, really. It was just a question of typing in the list of which columns I want to see and hitting enter. Now, there's a couple of other things we should notice about this. So, for example, if we look at the MARM table right here, okay, and if we look at the gross weight, and so any one of these columns can be sorted. So let's try and sort that, okay. That doesn't seem to be sorting right, and it's not, because what's happening is this is still being classified as a string, and it's not being classified as a number. So in order to fix that, we can go back and do a little bit more refinement. And this is not actually a view issue, this is a data type issue. So to fix this, we're going to go back into our studio, and we're going to go to the types. We're going to look at the MARM table type, right? And we're going to look at the gross weight column, which is right here. We're going to edit this column, and we're going to say that it's actually a decimal. Okay, we'll save that. It's not a string, it's a decimal. Okay, so now when we go back here and we let's just go back out and reload this table. Okay. Now then, it's sorting properly. Okay, so 0. Let's see if we can get up here to where it's a little bit higher. Well, we have lots of zeros. But you can see that it's sorting properly. In fact, maybe the best thing to do is to create a filter and say that we're only interested in looking at things where the gross weight is greater than 0. And there we have it. All right. So that takes care of sorting of a column when you have the right type of data. And we can also use the filtering operation, which would require this to be considered a numeric data type in order for it to function properly. So sometimes you have to go back and change that. So now if I go back and look at the table type one more time, I actually want to do the same thing again here on the volume. Okay, so let's look at the volume and change that to be the decimal as well. Okay, so we'll save that. And now we'll go back to our table. Just reload that MARM table right there. Okay, so now we have our volume able to sort properly. And if we do the same thing again on a different table type, so now I've gone back to the studio. I'm looking at my types. This time I'm going to look at the MBEW type. Okay, so I'll click on that type right there. And in this case, I want the total stock not to be a string, but to be actually an integer. So I'll save that. And I want the total value to be money. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing also with the moving average price. That's not a string, that's actually money. And with the standard price, that's money as well. Okay. All right, now going back to the factory and looking at our tables, if I look at the MBEW table. Now I can sort on stock levels. I can sort on price levels. Okay, so that's looking good. But I'd really like to have this this standard price and this moving average price looking more like a currency thing, so it looks like money. So now that I've got it properly identified as a money data type, what I can do is once again go back to the studio, and this time I'm actually going to edit the view. The view is where I can add a currency symbol. So I'm going to look at the MBEW, and I'm going to look at my browse view, and for my moving average price, I'm going to put in some formatting. And I won't get into all the details of how the formatting works, but you can use these codes to basically get lots of different results. So this one here will display it as a currency symbol. So I'm going to save that, and I'll do the same thing here again on standard price. Save that, and again on total value. Okay. And now if I go back here and again back to the factory, to my tables, looking at the MBEW table, now I see I have a currency symbol, a comma symbol. It's nicely formatted and sorting properly. So with just a little bit of effort in the CrystalWerx Studio, you can, after importing any type of data, which was easy to do, now you can go in and just tell CrystalWerx what type of data is in those columns. If you needed to sort properly, or if you needed to format it, you can go to the table views and add commands to format it any way you want, and you can have any set of columns displayed that you want. There's other things you can do with the views. You can control column widths. You can turn them into drop-down lists. There's a lot of things you can do, but we'll get into that later. Right now, that takes care of lesson number 2, where in lesson 1 you've imported some data, and now in lesson 2 you've changed the views and are able to control how CrystalWerx displays the data. So we'll see you in a few minutes for lesson number 3, which is where which is where we're going to show you how to add some validation rules to locate problems inside of your data. Okay, thank you.